Okay, that seems to work now. Good. All right, let's see, let me share my screen. All right, can you all see my screen? I'm assuming yes.
Yes, Professor.
Awesome. Let me turn on the chat. Let me make this. All right. Okay. All right, let's give everybody just a minute or so. Hope everybody enjoyed their long weekend. We have to take advantage of these short breaks since we're not going to have the spring break. All right. All right, welcome everybody. Let's see, we're on the 5th week of web development, and let's see. So we've covered quite a bit. So the first week or so, we focus on just installing some of the infrastructure that we were going to need throughout the semester. We installed a server. We created some really simple HTML, CSS, some Bootstrap to learn how to do responsive design, and so that we could build just plain old HTML, static HTML, but that it could react, it could adapt to the width of the screen, right? Or even as small as a phone or tablet. We then worked on JavaScript, where we started discussing how to make things dynamic. We saw how we can manipulate the DOM programmatically with JavaScript and jQuery. And last week, we introduced React.js as a JavaScript library that allows us to think about the DOM as a very abstract idea, right? That you don't manipulate the DOM directly. Instead, we use this kind of layer of abstraction on top of the DOM, so that we can think about building applications in terms of components, reusable components, right? And that's where we began. We introduced the assignment for React. We got you started. Today we're gonna move forward, right? We're gonna do some more coding and demoing. We're gonna introduce now the mechanism of being able to navigate between various parts of the application, right? Because even though we only have a few screens, right, we need to be able to know what are the mechanisms that we can navigate. Because the legacy way of navigation is, or the default way of navigating in a browser, is that you have a hyperlink, you click on it, and basically the browser unloads the entire document that it's in, and it replaces it entirely with a brand new document that you link. And so we're not, and we did that in the last couple of assignments, right? So we're going to abandon that, even though that is the standard, the most common way that we do navigation. We're introducing single page applications. Last week we introduced single page applications, right, with the React library, and that's the modern way of building, dynamic, responsive applications that interact very smoothly with human beings. So we're going to be focusing into this technique for the remainder of the semester. We'll introduce React routing. It's a library that allows us to implement routing, meaning navigation, right? But in single page applications, right? Without throwing away the entire document, right? Instead, we're going to be swapping content, right? We're going to listen to the to the URL changes, right? But instead of throwing away the content and fetching entire new documents and throwing it away, what we're going to do is that we're going to, in the background, we're going to load those snippets of code, right, of HTML code, and then we're going to, swap the content, right, and fill in the DOM, right, that div with the root, right. We're going to inject content in there as the URL changes as we click around. Okay, so yeah, so we're going to do so React routing today, and we'll play with it, see how we can use it to implement the assignment. Okay, there is a quiz today, I believe, that was scheduled for today, which was on JavaScript and ES6 and jQuery, and made available earlier today. Actually, might be available, yeah, earlier today, and it's available till tomorrow at midnight. Okay, so it's on JavaScript, jQuery, ES6, right? And I think it's about 40 minutes. If A3 is deliverable just, okay, so if A3 is, so it's a question here in the chat, says, if A3 is deliverable just the course editor, or are we importing everything, then working on the course editor the most? So the course editor, no, we're not doing the course editor at all, right? Well, not at all. We are doing the course list or the course manager, right? Where we have the we have the list of courses, right? And then we can add courses, remove courses, and we can edit the title of the course, right? The course editor, what we're doing about the course editor is that we are grabbing the body content of the course editor that we built in the previous assignment, and we're going to wrap it inside of a component. Okay, and so only so that we can practice how to navigate between two components, right? We'll focus in the next assignment in A4. We'll focus on how to implement that as a full-blown React component. Okay, but for now, it'll be just a static content, right, wrapped up inside of a React component. But there's not going to be any dynamic content about it, right? It'll be completely static. We're going to just navigate to it. We're going to learn how to navigate to between components. Okay. Will we have A3 rubric on Canvas? Yes. Yep, I'll make that available. All right. So let's see where we left off. And let's see. So this is the project that we had created last week. Let's run it. See where we are. Okay, so we were looking at this, and looks like we had created a course table, and we hadn't yet gotten started with a course grid. And here we have the course editor, right? And I believe, yeah, we were able to create courses. I'm not sure, were we able to delete courses? No, not yet. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute, but I did want to discuss the mechanism for being able to navigate between multiple components. Okay, so for instance, here we are showing 3 different pieces, right? We're showing a course table, we're showing a course grid, and we're showing a course the course editor. And obviously, we don't want to show all 3 things at once, right? We want to be able to toggle, right, between them, as we navigate between the different things. Okay, so let's discuss that that part. Let's see, is there a question in the chat? What I meant was, is the course list the only deliverable, or do we include all the other pages from the Spring Boot server too? No, only the course list. Yeah, only this course list and the course grid. Right, so the course table, the course grid, and the course editor. Those are the 3 deliverables for this assignment. Okay, so let's look at navigating. So to navigate, to create the navigation, which we're not going to call navigation, we're going to call it routing. Okay, that is the term, the technical term. And so we're going to use a library that's called React Router DOM. Okay, so look it up. It's right. Read some of the documentation. I'm going to show you how to use it, but there's plenty more here that we're not going to cover. right? There's a lot over here, right? We're only going to cover the tippy top, right? The bare minimum that we need to do navigation, right? Now, so we're going to cover about 20% of the content, but with that 20%, you can do 80% of most everything. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff that's some more edge cases and advanced, but most of what we're going to be doing is what you might need going forward. So let's first install it. So in the terminal, let me stop this. In the terminal, we're going to install it, and here it tells you how to do it. It just says npm install React Router DOM. So let's install it right here. All installations happen from the root of the project, right? So let's paste that. I guess it didn't copy, paste. There we go. Okay, so that's going to download the library, and basically what it's going to do, basically what we're going to do is that we want to be able to change here the URL, and as the URL changes, we want to show different content, right? So for instance, if we want to see a grid, then we're going to map it to a grid, right? If you want to see a table, we map it to table, right? If we want to see the editor, we map it to editor. And what we're going to do is that all those three components that we have so far, the table grid, the course grid, the course table, and the course editor, right? We're going to map them to three different URLs. And we're going to say, well, I want you to, we're going to configure it so it says, if you see this on the URL, then show this component. If you see this in the URL, then show that other component. Okay. Let's see if it's yeah, it's done. All right. So let's see how we do this. All right. So the way it works. Okay. The way it works is that here we have the course manager. Right. We have the course manager. And the course manager right now is loading. What is it loading? It's loading the course tables, loading the course grid, and let's see. The app here is loading the course manager on one side and the course editor on another. Okay. So what we're going to do, right, is we're going to usually at the very top of the application, right, we configure the routing, the navigation, right? So we're going to wrap this whole thing. We're going to wrap all entire application with a browser router. See that library is being imported, right, from React Router DOM, which we just installed, right? So it's gonna import it. There it is. Okay, and we're gonna wrap our entire application with router browser. Okay, there we go. Okay, then what the browser router allows you to do is configure routes, right? It allows you to say, take a look at the URL, right? If you see this in the URL, then I want you to show this, right? If you see that in the URL, then I want you to show something else. Okay, right? And so let's do that. What we're gonna do is that we're gonna say, and the way you configure it is by configuring a whole bunch of routes, okay, of route like that. Okay, route is also from the React Router DOM. Careful, don't include individually. Just include it right from within the library. There it is. Okay, there's route. Okay, right, and this one, what allows you to do is say, okay, well, if you see the following, right, if you see the following in the path, right, if you see a string slash courses, for instance, okay, if you see courses, I want you to show me the following component, right? And we show the component right here, like that. Okay. If you see instead editor, okay, then you're going to show me the course editor. Okay. If you see, so all right, let's do that. All right, let's only do that. Let's remove this for now. Let's comment this out for a second. Okay, and let's run this. Let's run this. Okay, and when it loads, notice that it doesn't show anything. It doesn't show anything, right? Because there's no match, right, to anything on the path. But if we say here what was it? Courses. So it's courses. Okay, notice that indeed it loads the course manager, right? And if I show the editor, notice that it shows the editor. See that? Right. So now we have a mechanism that we can map now changes in the URL with changes in the component, right? And that's how we're going to be able to navigate, right? So for instance, in the course manager, right? We in the course table, the course table is generating. If you remember, these course rows were generating all these course titles. See that course title? Well, instead of me typing this in the instead of me typing it on the path, right? If I go back, oh, also a really nice thing is that also notice that I'm using my arrows keys, right, to go back and forth, right? So it actually remembers in the history, right? Because the changes in the path, as they change the back button and the forward button, right? Notice that it's stuck in the history, and it loads, it triggers the reloading and the re-rendering of these components, okay, which is pretty cool. How much faster is component-based approach than the legacy and entirely new DOM approach? So it depends. It depends what you're comparing. Okay, if you're comparing that, for instance, I want to delete this course, for instance. If I want to delete the course and I click on delete, it only entails removing a table row, right, and not re-rendering the entire page. Okay, so certainly if I am modifying a small portion of the application, definitely this approach is much faster. Okay, now if you're talking about rendering an entire page, right, with lots of content, lots of dynamic stuff and things like that, then the legacy is faster, right? And so oftentimes because you have a whole server on the other side, maybe you have a lot of content that is already cached and ready to be downloaded and pumped at the page. And whereas if you're rendering an entire page dynamically, you might see a lot of spinning little things, right, where you I still have to go to the server, fetch the data, right, and dynamically render it. So oftentimes what you'll get is a combination of these two techniques, where the very first landing page, right, is usually maybe very static, right, very static. Maybe a little portion of it is dynamic, and because we want to pump as much content as fast as possible to the landing page, so that folks that might be just perusing and coming to our website, we don't want them to see a whole bunch of things spinning, waiting for the to fetch data, right? So we might pump a lot of content really, really fast, right? Maybe have a small little piece that is dynamic, but then after that first loading of the main content, then subsequent queries, subsequent updates, we would use single page applications that would strategically modify small snippets of the document. So definitely it's a good use of both techniques wherever is possible, right? Where is appropriate. Okay, so yeah, notice that one of the great things, right, is that the back buttons and the forward button works perfectly. So the history is supported, right? Same thing with if you use the arrows and arrow keys, perfect. But instead of me typing it, right, I could create a hyperlink out of this. I could create a hyperlink, okay? And the out of this, and this could be something like A, right, and then href, and then it points to editor, right? So this would be /editor, right? And this would be a hyperlink, right? So that now, notice that these are now hyperlinks. If I hover, notice that down at the bottom, you can see the URL that it's pointing to, right? So it is pointing to editor. If I click on it, notice that indeed it loads. See that, right? Now, if we look at if you inspect and you put this on the right-hand side, let's remove that, and you look at the network. Okay, let's go back. Okay, notice that we loaded the courses, reloaded this whole thing. And when I click on 5610, notice that it was an entire reload. See that? It's an entire reload. If I go back, again, it reloads the whole thing. Again, if I click here, notice that it's an entire reload, right? Exactly what we did not want, right? We don't want to be swapping and refreshing the whole thing, right? So to get around that, instead of using hyperlink, right, we're going to use another element called link. Now, link is also part of the library, the React Router DOM, right, which is going to behave just like the hyperlink, right? And instead of href, it uses to. Right, so it's linked to /editor. Okay. Now the first time around, okay, notice that it's cached. See that? Notice that here we're not reloading anything. If I click on it, notice that it's not throwing away the HTML DOM, right? And if I go back, notice that it didn't reload it again. So notice that I'm now flipping between the two components, right, dynamically without throwing away the whole content and just re-rendering the whole thing, right? So as you navigate through the entire several portions of the components, right, all these things would be cached on the browser, right, and you would never have to go back to the server, right? So you would only get the first hit, right, of loading the content, and then never again. Okay, which is one of the things that we want to use, right? Same thing if I want to go back, right, in the course editor. In the course editor, we could. Right, if we go to course editor, right, we could put a back button over here, right? So maybe we can put a font awesome FA arrow left. How's that? Oops. Let's close that. So there it is, arrow left. Right now it's not doing anything, right? But we can make it a hyperlink out of it. We can say, let's put this inside of a link, right? From React Router DOM. We're going to link it to, we're going to go back to what the course is, okay? So that's going to replace the URL with /courses, and it's going to bring us back to the courses, okay? So let's try that. So now notice that it's now linked as blue. If I click on it, notice that it goes to the courses. See that? Perfect, excellent. That's exactly what we wanted to do. Right. What about the course table and the course grid? We also want to be able to toggle between the two, right? If we don't want to show both of them, we want to show one or the other. Okay. So we could be a little more specific, right? That this might be /courses /table maybe. And if it's table, then we render the table. If it's instead grid, right, we render the grid, right? We could do that, right? So let's do that, right? What we could do is that instead of the course manager having both of these in here, right? What we could do is let's see. This is the course manager, right? And in here, I think I would have wanted the router to be in here, and which contains this whole thing, right? And then do the routing here. Let's see. Let's see if we can create a route in here. Right, we can create a route here and say that if we see here a route, and if the path is, let's see, courses /grid, then the component that we want to render is the, which one is it? Grid, right? Course grid, like that. Okay. And we need to bring that in from route. There we go. And we want to have the courses table, right? We want to render the course table in here, right? So we're going to take that out. Okay, so let's see what we got. Okay, so notice that it's grid here, right? And then the grid, this could be, we are showing table, or we're showing grid. right? So I can also toggle between the two, right? And obviously not clicking, not actually typing it. We could use maybe an icon, right? So for instance, in the cores table, right, we could put an icon that would allow me to navigate to one or the other, right? So for instance, in the cores table, we could put an icon here that says icon class, right? And this would be FAS, FA, let's say, is there like a list maybe? Okay. Let's see what that renders on the table. Okay, so that looks like a list, and let's maybe just put it on the right-hand side for now. So we're going to float this to the right, all the way to the right. All right, so there it is, right? There it is, right? And so we can link it and say, okay, I'm going to link this so that from React Router DOM. So this is going to take me to courses grid. Actually, no, where are we? We are in the course table. So I guess not a list, right? Maybe a grid. Do we have a grid here? Grid or maybe table? Let's see what that looks like. I don't know. I don't know what that. Okay, that looks sort of like a table. Let's click on it. All right, that takes me to grid almost. Did I do it wrong? Grid. Did I misspell it? Oh, I misspelled it. Sorry. Courses. Let's go back. Refresh. Okay, let's click on it. And there it is. So it takes us to grid. And in grid, we can do the opposite, right? In the grid, we can, when we are in the grid, where's the grid? Let's see. In the grid, where are we? Course grid, right? We can put a hyperlink over here, right? We could put maybe, let's wrap this inside of a div. Okay. And here we'll put a hyperlink. We'll say I class, and this will be FAS, FA, maybe a list, right? Okay, and let's do a float to the right. So float to the right. Let's see, like a list, right? And then we can put it inside of a hyperlink link, and it's going to go to /courses/table. There we go. Okay, so if I click on it, right, it gives me the table. If I click on it, so notice that I can toggle between the two. See that, right? Or I can click on a course, right, and it takes me to the course editor, and then I can go back from the course editor to the course manager. Okay. Notice that I'm here in the editor, right, and I kind of like forgot that I was either on the grid or I was on the table. See that, right? So ideally, I would remember that I was in the table, right? I clicked on this, and then when I would like to go back, see that? Instead of clicking here and going specifically to /courses, I would like to go back and remember, well, you could have come here from the table, or you could have come here from the grid, correct? Right? So how is it that we could manage that? How we can manage that? So what we can do is that is in the course manager, this course grid, we can pass it some API. There's API in here in the course grid. Right? There's API that we can pass here that can allow us to do certain things. Okay, including being able to go back. Right, that we want to be able to remember that we can go back. Right. In particular from the course editor, right? In the course editor, when we click on this go back, on this back arrow pointing left, we don't just want to go to /courses. Somehow we would like to say, well, go back where you came from, right? I don't know if you came from grid. I don't know if you came from the table, right? Just go back, right? So how can we do that? Well, in the course editor, right? In the manager here, I think it was, right? In app, we need to pass it some API for it to be able to call and programmatically decide to come back, right? So how do we do that? So the way we're going to do that, right, is that instead of using components, there's an alternative syntax to this. There's an alternative syntax that it's going to send several functions that we can, several objects that we can, that is going to have the APIs that's going to allow us to call a go back, right? So if you look at the API here, and you look at the history, there's a history API. History, let's see, where can I find it? History, use history now. History, there we go. Yeah, so history, right? We can ask for history, and once we have the history, we can call go back on it, right? Base, location, context, children. I can't find it now. Anyway, let me show you. Let me show you how we would do it. So to be able to pass objects down to the components, right? Notice that over here, it's inside of an expression, right? It's not the actual it's not the actual component as a tag, right? So I can't pass it anything here. I can't pass it anything. So instead of using this syntax, we're going to use an alternative syntax. We're going to use this syntax. We're going to say router or route, same thing, path, right? Slash courses, slash editor, right? And instead, you can use a different configuration. We're going to say editor. Okay, and the not editor. I'm sorry. What is it called? I think it's render. And in render, you can provide a function, right? A function that can evaluate, right? You can evaluate the component that you want to use, right? So for instance, you can say, I want to evaluate to whatever the course editor evaluates to. Okay, and this would render identical to what we already have, right? So this still works just like before. Nothing has changed, right? It's just basically this allows you to programmatically compute. Maybe you want to do a loop, maybe you want to put it inside of an if statement, maybe you want to do some branching, right? As opposed to hard coding the component, you can put it inside of a function where you can calculate. You can put an algorithm and decide, what do I want to render for editor? Okay, so that's the only difference. Now the difference, the additional difference is that because this is a function, and allows me to calculate this, right? It allows me to pass other things down to the course editor. Okay, in particular, it allows me to pass in an object called props. Okay, props is all the properties that the router, right, this API passes all bunch of APIs in a variable called properties. Okay, which is the same property that we looked at. Did we look at class? Did we use classes yet? Yeah, right now. See this this here, right? This class, right, uses properties, and we'll look at properties a little more today. I did want to show you how we can implement a routing, right? So let me show you. In now that we pass the properties in the apps, where were we? Was it manager? Was it apps? Okay, here we can pass all the properties down to the course editor using the following syntax, right? You can say send over all the properties down to the course editor, right? All the objects that are in there. This is a new syntax that I'm going to introduce in a minute. It's called a spreader syntax, right? That basically what it does is that it copies an object, right? All the name value pairs of an object, right? And it passes them down, right? Meaning that all the properties that are in there, including all the objects that are in that property, are going to be available now in the course editor in the function, right? And so, and now in this function, I'm getting all those properties as an object, and I can use the syntax the destructor syntax to retrieve certain objects that are in the object that is being passed to me, right? In particular, I want the history object, okay? The history object. And the history object is going to allow me to call, for instance, and be able to go back instead of going to specific course, right? So let's put here a span and say that I want to go back. Right now, I can programmatically call history. I can say if you click on this, I want to call the following history dot go back. Go back. There it is. All right, so let's try it. Go back. There it is. See that? Right. So if I go from here, from the table, and I go back, I click on go back, it goes back to table. Right. If I go to the grid, let's say I go to the grid, and from the grid, oh, I have no way of going to the to the editor. Well, let me do it this way. Let me go to editor. Right. It's not editor. Did it misspell it? Editor. Isn't it editor? Editor. Oh, just editor. Sorry. Editor. I can go back right to the course manager. So let me show you the to finalize this example in the course editor. Right. In the course editor, I would have all my courses listed here. Right. So say I have one of my courses here. And it would be inside of a link that allows me to go to the editor /editor and to go to the course CS5610, say, right, in the grid, right? Notice that the grid, I can go back and forth between the table and the grid. Here I have a list as a table, but here it would be listed as a whole bunch of cards, right? So notice I can navigate to the editor, and now I can go back to the grid. See that? Or if I went from the table and I go back, it goes back to the table, right? So I can remember, right? I can use the history, right? So that you can go back to where you were, right? So instead of going specifically to the courses. Does that make sense? Right. Anyway, I will make this code available so that you can play around with it yourself. I did want to give you at least the basis for being able to navigate right between the course manager, the course table, and the course editor. Okay. All right. Is there a question here? Why isn't it props.history? Where? Do you mean the question? I think is in the course editor. Why is it not props.history? Is that your question? Yeah. So what happens is that in the app, right, we are passing all the properties. So in here, right, that contains a whole bunch of objects, right, including history, another one called match, another one called location, another one called a whole bunch of objects are being passed, right? So I'm copying all those properties, right, name, value pair, into the as if I were doing name equal value, you know, we know that we can pass in arguments, right, as attributes into these elements, right? So I'm copying all those name value pairs. So all those are being passed in the to the course editor, and then the course editor can take that map. Basically, it's getting a map, and then you can extract only the pieces that you need from the object that is being passed in. Okay. All right, excellent. So, right, so that's routing. That's all the routing you really need for this assignment, right? We're going to get into much more sophisticated routing next week, right? But this is basically the routing that you need. Now, you know, I used these routes, right? /courses /editor. courses grid / courses table. You don't have to use exactly these routes, okay? I don't believe the assignment even tells you to use one or the other, but certainly this definitely would work, right? But feel free to change it a little bit if you want to move it around and play around with it. But certainly this works for you, okay? All right. The other thing that I wanted to cover for today, so that you can go on and complete the assignment, is that right now, Course Manager, let's see, the course table right now has these courses over here, right? It has the courses right here. Yes? They have it in this state. They have it inside of this state. But this information is supposed to be captured from a database, right? From the server. The server is supposed to grab all this information. So we need to integrate this with the server, right? So how do we do that? Okay, so first of all, let's see how this is being rendered, right? So here we have add course. Here we have course table. Here we have the add course, right? And here's the iteration of the course row, okay? Now, one of the first things that we need to fix first, right, is that the course manager, right, this courses, this list of courses, that list of courses, notice that really it's everything is happening in the course table. And I believe before we left last time we met, right, we had decided that that really the state, right, this list of courses is really the same for both the course table and the course grid. That a better place for this to live is not down here in the course table, but a better place for it to live is way up here in the course manager, right? And then the course manager can then pass the same courses down to both the course grid and the course table, right? That makes sense, right? That instead of having the courses down here, down here in the table, having it in the course table, it makes more sense to bring it to the parent, right? The course manager, so that it can then be shared with both the course grid and the course table, right? So let's first fix that. Let's fix it. And I think we had started when we left last time we met, right? We moved the courses up here, okay? And we're going to move everything that we had inside the table. We're going to remove it from here. We'll remove it from here. And also we're going to have to move any functions that manipulate the state needs to also be moved up to the, wherever the state is, where the state actually is, right? Because we need to be able to set state, okay? Also, this function, right, is needs to live way up there instead of down here in the table, right? Because this button of creating new courses is actually shared amongst both the course grid and the course table. It should be shared, not down here in the course grid. We need to the course table. We need to bring it up. Okay, so let's do that. Let's work on that first. We do have to see how is it that we're going to iterate over these courses, right? Because now it's going to live in my parent, not down here, right? So somehow I need to get it down to my to this course table, right? Somehow I need to bring it down, right? So let's see how we can do this. Okay. All right. So we already moved the state. We've already moved the state. It's way up here, right? Let's also. So let's remove it from here. Let's remove it from here. I'm gonna remove it, and now it's gonna complain, right? It's gonna complain saying, I don't have I don't have that array anymore. It's complaining that I don't have the array anymore. Where is it? Okay, so what we're gonna do is that we're going to now, we know that it lives in the parent. There it is. We have to bring it down to the course grid. So or the course table. Actually, let me move this up here. So how do we move it down? Okay, so we have a couple of ways. There's an alternative syntax to this. There's an alternative syntax to this that goes as follows. I'm going to comment that out. There's alternative syntax that goes as follows, right? Instead of putting the component here as an argument, we can put it instead of here, course table, like that. Okay. And we can now pass it. We can pass it these courses. We can pass it the courses as an attribute is I can pass you this dot state dot courses. There we go. I just passed it to you, right, as an attribute. So you, as a table, should be able to grab it. But we're a class. We're not a function. Okay, we're not a function. So what do? Right? Well, we do have a constructor though, right? There's a constructor, and just like a function can receive attributes in the parameters here, when you are a class, the way you receive attributes or arguments or parameters is through the constructor. Okay, so all the properties here, any properties that I pass in here, right? Courses, I might pass other attributes, name, value, pairs, a whole bunch of them, right? Are going to be available through this props here. See that? Okay. Now notice that we are doing super.props. That's required, right? Because we are inheriting the constructor from component, right? And that constructor, right, demands that we pass it the properties that you receive in the constructor, right? And that property includes these courses. So we can just use this props now. Now this props is a variable that is available in this class as an instance variable, right? So this here, instead of this dot state dot courses, is now available in this dot props dot courses, right? So this courses now would be the courses that I'm passing you here, which happens to be tied to the state variable over here, right? So now if I go back, notice that I have my courses back again. See that? Perfect, excellent. But if I click on add course, right, this breaks, right? It breaks because in my course table, my add course function is trying to change the state of something that doesn't exist anymore. Okay, where is that state now? It's way up in my parent, right? So I need to move this also to my parent. So let's move this to my parent. Right, let's copy this, move it out up to my parent, up to the course manager, and I'll put here the handler. Right, the handler is this that state, right? There it is, the this that state, and then changing the state, pushing it in there. Perfect, right? But because I moved it, right? Right? Notice that if I click on add course, right, it's not really tied to anything, right? Because if I go, where is that button? Where does that button live? That button is still in the table. It's still down here in the table. So we need to bring that too. Right, so let's bring this button over to my parent. Okay, so let's and then we'll put it maybe down here. Okay, now let's try it out. Okay, now we're back in business. Everybody okay? Are you still with me? All right, so we want to be able to also share the same list of courses with the grid, right? Right. So yeah, with this grid representation, right? So we could do exactly the same thing we did for passing the courses down to the course table. We can do the same thing for the grid. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here just to leave it as documentation, right? We can do this instead, right? We can just put in here the course grid and pass it the courses this dot state dot courses. Okay. Yes. All right. Excellent. So let's look at the course grid. All right. So notice that in the course grid we used a function component. We implemented as a function, as opposed to in the course table we used a class. Okay. Right. Let's see. There's a question in the chat. Is props like a class object? Yes. Yep. It becomes when you say super.props, it makes it a class variable. Yep. Makes it available everywhere in the instance. So yeah. So because this was a class, it was being passed to us in the constructor. In a function component, we don't have a constructor, right? Instead, it's being passed as a map. Right, all those name value pairs in the attributes, right? You know, anything here, it creates a map of all the objects, and we have it here. Okay. Now that object, we can deconstruct that object and retrieve each one of the attributes, right? So courses, right? So courses value is whatever that attribute was assigned to. So now courses is mapped to this.state.courses. So now we can iterate, right, and render the courses, right, as cards. Let's see. Let's go and copy one of these cards from Bootstrap. We'll go to the documents and grab a cards. There it is. And let's grab one of these cards. I guess this one's as good as any. Let's grab that card. And here's a card. We need to clean this up a little bit. Let's see. We have an image there. It's missing a closing tag. We have a card, blah, 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 blah. Let's see how that renders. Oops. Let's see. Still doesn't like it. Something probably. Oh, yeah. Style, right? Okay. So this is a good segue. In React, you cannot, just like you cannot use the class property, you have to instead use class name. Well, there's also a restriction on the use of style, right? So style, you cannot use, well, you can use the attribute style, but you cannot pass it a string. It cannot be a string. It has to be an object. It needs to be an object. And the object is going to contain name value pairs, okay? And here, for instance, one of the names is going to be the width, and the value would be, whatever that is, 18 rem. Okay, so we're going to convert this into an object, an equivalent JSON object, right? So first, we need to wrap this inside a curly bracket saying that this is going to be an expression, right? It's going to be a JavaScript expression. It's going to evaluate into some object, right? So you can put a function here. You can calculate this function, right? You can dynamically generate the style on the fly, okay? For now, we're going to hard code it into a hard coded JSON object, right? So I'm going to put another curly bracket. Okay? So this inner curly bracket is because I want this expression to evaluate to the JSON object that is in here, of which a JSON object has name and values, right? Properties, right? And the values for those properties, right? So he's going to be, my property is going to be width, and the value is going to be the following string. That's it. Okay. If I go back now, notice that it doesn't complain anymore. All right. All right. Excellent. So we have that card title. How many card titles? Well, one per course. No. Well, we can do that. We can put this inside of a loop that we can iterate over the courses. We can say courses. We can iterate, right? I mean, how many courses do we have? Well, let's see if we're getting all those courses, right? We can maybe print in here how many we have. We can say courses.length, right? Presumably it's an array. Okay, 5. Yeah, that looks right, right? Okay, so we can iterate over it, right? So let's iterate. We're gonna say courses. We're gonna map over them, and here's a course, and we're gonna return as a value the card. Let's grab the card and let's put it in there. There we go. That's how many cards we have. See that? One per course. It's not exactly what we wanted, but let's see if we can improve on this. The title would be, instead of the hard-coded card title, this could be the course.title. There it is. See that? CS5610, 4500, 3200, right? And what about this link here? Instead of this being a go somewhere link, we can convert that into an actual link. We can say, convert this, right? Instead of a, this could be a hyperlink, a link like that, where this goes to, right? And where do we go? We're going to go to the editor. See that? Right? So now I can click on this and it goes to the editor. See that? And I can go back. Or the editor. I can go back. Or I can go to the table and I can go to the editor and I can go back. Right? And notice that the editor, right, knows to come back to the correct either table or grid. Make sense? All right, awesome. So notice that this had 5 courses. You can click and add more courses. So if we go to the grid, notice that we still have, see that? It's the same list of courses. new course back, and I can still see the same that many courses. Everybody good? Everybody still with me? All right, excellent.
Professor?
Right, yes.
Yeah, if it's fine, is it fine to go over the props part? I just had some questions there. Or is it? Can I take it up later or
Let's
something?
see. I'm sorry, what's the question?
Can you just go to the code, like uh, where you're showing constructors as well as the function? So in the function, you're able to deconstruct the object. Is it? Can we do that? Can we do the same at the constructor level as well?
No, you can't.
Okay,
Here
and
you get the props, right? And
mhm,
so it's the object, and then you treat it using just plain old object notation, right? Props dot whatever.
okay, and is super like it has to be there, or what is it?
Yes, super has to be there.
Is
That
it?
is required because you're inheriting it from components.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so right, so what we need to what we need to get going here is this data, right? We don't really want to just have it in this array, right? In this hard-coded array. Really, we want it to come from the database, right? If we create a course, right, we want it to create it in the server, not here. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, just like we did in the previous assignment, right, we're going to have a service. So we're going to create a directory called services, right? And in here, we're going to have a file, JavaScript. We're going to call it course service.js. Okay. And in here, what we're going to do is that this is not going to have anything to do with React, right? So we don't need to import React at all, right? This is not rendering anything. It's just talking to the server. Okay. So let's see if we have courses. I believe we have courses from the previous assignment. Let's see, generic server courses. Okay, we got a couple courses with some titles. All right, so let's use this. So basically, we want to hit this URL, obviously using your NEU, not mine. We're going to hit this and retrieve these courses. So we know how to do that, right? We did that for jQuery, but we want to do it here. So how do we do this? So we're going to put a function, and it's going to be constant. Find all courses. Okay? And it's going to look very, very much to what we did in jQuery, but we are now going to strictly use ES6, right? We're no longer going to be using ES5, right? So basically, we're going to do find all courses. Let's declare also a constant here. So we're going to say courses URL. We're going to put it inside of there it is. Okay. And what we're going to do is that we're going to return whatever fetch returns. We'll return the courses. There it is, right? And right again, because we're using ES6 and we're using the arrow functions, right? This becomes very, very terse, right? So the then is going to come back with a response, which we're going to parse the JSON, and that's what's going to be returned. So this whole function just returns the parsing of the JSON from the response that comes back from fetching the courses. Okay? And we're going to expose it. We're going to export this. We're going to export the find all courses. All right? All right, now that we have that, we can go back to our course manager. We can go back to our course manager, and we can import that service. All right, we're going to import from find all courses from course service. There it is. So we can use this. Now, where do we run this? Okay, let's see the question. There's a question that says, can we use ES6 class style for services that ES? Sure. Yes, you can do that. I'm in the course service using class. Yeah, that's fine. Perfect. Yeah, you can do that totally. All right, so here, where do we do that? We want to do this when this component first loads. Okay. And so when do we do that? Well, we can do that here. We have a constructor. We can do that in constructor. But instead of doing it in the constructor, I wanted to introduce you to a lifecycle function that gets invoked, right when right after everything gets loaded, and it's telling you, hey, I'm ready if you're going to do some and do some updates, right? Now's a good time. Okay, so let's do that. That function is called component did mount. So this is a function, right? That's React that we are inheriting from components that notifies you, hey, the component is ready, right? Everything mounted, everything. You know, if you want to update anything, if you want to update a state, this is a good place to put it, right? So we're going to use find all courses, right? The function, we'll call it. This is going to come back with a promise that is going to have the actual courses, right? And we're just going to update our state with these courses. So I'm going to say this dot set state, right? The courses, right? So courses. Now you could say courses, right? Meaning I am updating the state variable courses with the content that's coming from here, or, right? You could use the syntax where you can, you know, if the property and the variable have the same name, you can do a shortcut, right? And you can just say courses. Okay, again, that's a ES6 syntax. Let's see. Could you tell me what does set state do? Yeah, so just like component did mount is a function that we are inheriting from component, right? And it allows us to listen for events that is being called by the infrastructure. Set state is also a function that we are inheriting from components, right? It's a function that allows the framework to be notified that the state has changed, right? And that perhaps we need to update the user interface, right? It's very, I don't know if you've taken graphics courses, right? And in the graphics course, you know, oftentimes, you know, usually you're like in a really tight loop, right? Where you have an infinite while loop, right? That where you're updating variables, right? And the renderer goes and tries to pump frames to the screen, yes? And so usually this loop, oftentimes you don't have control over that loop, right? Because it's trying to pump as many frames per second, right? So oftentimes you're giving an API that tells the framework, the rendering engine, that says, hey, you know, something happened, a missile hit the base and exploded, right? It's time to render the explosion, right? And oftentimes you call this API saying, hey, something happened, please re-render right now. Okay, so same thing here. We're notifying the framework that something happened, right? And it's a good time right now, right, to re-render the frame, to re-render the screen, right? So that set state gives a hint to the rendering engine, the React rendering engine, that it's a good time for you to re-render the DOM, okay? Because something changed. Now that rendering engine is actually going to compare. It's going to compare this, right? The state. If the state has not changed, it's going to compare the previous state with the next state. If it hasn't changed, it says, well, you know, there's no need to render. There's no need to render the DOM because the state hasn't changed. Why bother re-rendering the DOM? Okay. So oftentimes it will happen to you that, hey, I'm calling set state, but nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. My UI is not changing. Well, make sure that indeed the state has changed, right? If it hasn't changed, you won't see any change in the user interface. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's try it out. Right. Let's see. Now let's. Oh, all my courses. All right. Notice that we went out to the courses, and from the server, and the server looks like I'm like all my courses are called whatever. Okay. All right. I think somebody was just posting a bunch of courses to my server. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so notice that indeed we went out and fetched this information from the server. Perfect. So that worked. Okay, that totally worked. Perfect. So let's add more things to here, right? We want to maybe remove a course. How's that? We're going to remove a have the trash can right here. We want to click on this and remove that course. So how do we do that? Well, the state that we want to modify. Also notice here that this state is really now bogus. I don't really need this state here, right? Because I just need a placeholder for the state, right? So that I can go fetch the data and then populate that array. But I don't need to put here some hard-coded data. Nevertheless, I do need it in there. Okay, you cannot change a state that was not there already. So you just can't say set state on something that was not there already. So you need to at least initialize it with something. Okay. Anyway, we want to remove something. So how do we remove? Well, to remove, it has to happen at this trash can. Where is that trash can? Well, the trash can is inside of my table, and my table has that course row, and the course row has the trash can. So we need to be able to put an on click here, and then somehow make and tell the server that something happened. So how do we do that? Okay, so to do that, we need an on click here, right? We need an on click. Okay, and this on click, we need to be able to call, delete course, right? So where is this function? Where's this function? Well, we're not a class, or are we? No, we're not a class, right? And we're just having, somebody's passing us this information, right? So what we're going to do is that we're not a handlers. We're not going to handle our own state. Okay, that's very important. Right? Instead, somebody else is responsible for maintaining the state, right? I just need to notify whoever's handling the state that something happened, right? Like, for instance, we deleted the course. So this is going to be an argument that somebody's going to pass us down. Somebody's going to pass me that function as an argument, right? Who's going to pass it to me? My parent. Here's my parent. So my parent is going to pass delete course, right? So this is the attribute that this is expecting. What am I going to pass you? Well, I need to pass it to you. Again, I don't have it, right? Because the table is not going to handle the state, right? The state, notice the table doesn't have a state anymore, right? The table doesn't have a state. Instead, somebody's going to pass it to it in the properties as a property, right? So this dot props dot, where are we? Are we a function or are we a class? Okay, we're a class. Sorry, we're a class. Right. So yeah. So somebody's passing it to us as a property. Who's passing it to us? Our parent, the manager. So the manager here is going to pass me. He's going to pass me the delete course, which is going to live here. This dot delete course, which doesn't exist yet. Let's create it right here. Delete course is a function that we're going to call from way down there in the row, right? So alert delete course, right? Let's see if we were able to plumb the whole thing, right? We were plumbers here, right? So let's click on the tab. There we go. So we are calling that function. See that? So all are calling that function. Perfect. Excellent. Now we are going to need to know which course do you want to remove, right? So this function here, instead of just calling the function like that, we need to pass an argument. We need to pass an argument. Okay, so careful. If I do that, it's going to go into an infinite loop, right? So careful, don't do that. Okay. So the safe thing to do is to wrap this inside a lambda and then do the actual call. All right. Okay, don't forget to put the lambda, right? Especially if you're going to pass an argument here, right? If you don't need to pass an argument, you don't need the lambda, right? But I'm going to suggest that you always do the lambda so that you don't mistakenly or inadvertently get into an infinite loop. Okay, so what are we going to pass? Well, we're going to pass you the same course that you pass me. I'm going to pass you the course object so that you know what it is that I am deleting. Right. So now the manager is receiving, as part of the delete, the actual course that is being removed. Right. So I can now print out and say the course may be the ID of that I'm going to remove, right? So let's do that. So if I click here, notice that it'll say, 602 something something 3284F. Or if I click on this one, it'll be something 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 32856, right? So I'm passing the actual object that I want to remove, which I can now send to my server and say, hey, delete it. I want you to delete it from the server, right? And we did that. We had a whole week on that, right? You did that in jQuery. So it's almost the same exact code that you did in jQuery, right? So to delete, it'll be something like export const delete course, and I want the ID of the course ID. Very, very similar to the code that we did 2 weeks ago. So fetch. Now here the URL is going to be the URL with the course ID at the end, right? So it's going to be an expression. Backtick expression. I'm going to need the URL, right? Followed by the ID. Right? Again, this is very, very similar to what you did 2 weeks ago, right? So this should not be a surprise to you. We need this to be a delete. So it's going to be that the method is going to be delete. Okay, that's it. That's all we need. And we're going to return. Now, what the server returns is some status information. So here's the response. In the response, it's just some status information telling you whether the delete was successful or not, right? And that's what I'm going to return, the status. Okay. All right. So now that I have this, I can go back to my manager. I can import, right, that delete course, and I can invoke it from here. I can say delete course. I can pass in the ID. And what I'm going to get back is some status information from the server saying, yep, you were able to delete something or not, right? So what are we going to do here? Well, presumably this guarantees us that the delete succeeded, right? And so we need to update our local state. We need to which we got from retrieving the courses, right? We could be lazy and just find all the courses again, right? Which is going to be all the courses minus the course we just deleted, right? But that would be very expensive, right? I mean, what if you have hundreds of courses, right? Just delete one, going to fetch 99 courses would be very, very expensive. Instead, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna rely on the fact that I have a cache, I have a copy of those courses already here. I just need to filter out that course that I just removed. Yes? So we're going to do that. We're going to say, we're going to recalculate these courses. And we're going to say that, we're going to say this dot set state. Okay. We're going to say that courses is going to be what is going to grab the old courses. Going to grab the old courses, and I'm going to filter. Let's see, I'm going to filter from the old courses, and I'm only going to keep. So here's a course as I'm iterating over the course. I'm only going to keep if the course, right, is not, if the ID of the course, right, is not this course that I'm deleting. Okay, so I'm going to say maybe C and C is not the course.id. If it's not, I keep it. Otherwise, I'm going to filter out. I don't want it. Courses. Oh, sorry. This dot state dot courses. This dot state dot courses filter. Okay. All right. Let's see if this blows up. Let's clear this. Let's remove one. Okay, there's our delete. Okay, looks like it was the remove. I don't know. Let's refresh. Okay, we have one less. We have one less. So it looks like it works. Okay. All right, there's one problem with this. Even though it worked, this is bad practice. Okay. I just wanted to show the way that you should not do it first. Now let me show you how you should do it. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to leave it there just for reference. just for reference, if the next state is based off of the previous state, like here, right? I'm going to calculate the next value of courses in terms of the previous value of courses. Okay, if that's the case, right, then you shouldn't do it this way. Okay, instead you should use the following syntax. So set state has two syntax, right? One of the syntax, you can pass a JSON object like we're doing here. You can pass a JSON object, right? And you can recalculate the value of whatever attribute there is and whatever, right? The other syntax takes as it takes as argument a function like that. Okay, and whatever this function returns, whatever that function returns, will be the next state. Okay, right? And the way you calculate is that it's going to pass you the previous state, which is a copy of what it has in cache. And now you can recalculate. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to grab the state. Instead of saying this.state.courses, you can say previous state.courses. Okay. Now this is the syntax here is wrong. Let's see. That's weird. It's not highlighting it. I think this is supposed to be in a parentheses. Yeah, it's supposed to be in a parentheses. That's weird that it was not highlighting it. It's an error. Anyway, let's try it out. Let's see if it blows up. Okay, let's remove this. Okay, it works just the same, right? It works just the same, right? Either case, it would have worked, okay? But if you do this, right, you'll be frowned upon by your colleagues, right? This set state guarantees sequential, right? If you have multiple things happening at the same time, right? This make sure that things that happen asynchronously at the end happen synchronously. All right, so you don't have some weird results, some weird race conditions. Okay. All right, excellent. So delete works. How about add course? Let's fix add course so that instead of adding it to my state here, instead of adding it here, right? Let's actually send it to the server. So we know how to do that, right? We need a post. So let's go to service. Let's create a post. So export const create course, takes in a course object, right? And we're going to send. Again, this is very, very similar to the code that we looked at 2 weeks ago. You can almost copy it verbatim, right? Obviously, you might have done it for users. This is for courses, but it's the same course, it's the same code that I gave you, 2 weeks ago, right? So nothing new here, right? So create course. This is just course ID, right? I mean just a course here, the URL, no ID. It's a post this time, right? We need to convert this into a JSON object, into JSON string, right? So we need to stringify this, the course, and we need to use the correct header, right? We need to pass in the content type, which is going to be the application/JSON, right? And what we get back from the server, we get back the actual object that was inserting in the database, right? Okay, so this is getting pretty big, right? The final courses, delete course, and create course. And the way we're using it in the manager is that we are importing them one at a time, right? What we can do instead is that we can put it inside of an object, right? Maybe call it API, and then put each one of these in that object. Or find course, right? Find course. So name value pair, right? And each one put them in this object. Put it in the object, and the create course, like that. And then just these were being exported each individually, right? Create course, delete course, find course. That's why we had to use the destructor to import each one individually, yes? Or whole API, we can say export default, default the API. See that? You can only default export one thing. And when you do that, here, you can just say the default export here, you can say, call it course service. Okay. And so now this notice that it's not in curly brackets. You can only have one thing outside of the curly brackets, right? And it's tied to whatever you default export, right? So now this makes it a little bit cleaner, right? Especially if you have multiple things in there, or maybe you might have multiple functions that are called find all courses or delete course. Maybe you have a delete course locally here. See that? Delete course. You have another delete course. So this starts to get hard to read. So wait a minute, is this a loop? This is an infinite loop here? Well, no, this is really a service, course service dot delete course. See that? All right. So it allows you to namespace things and make it a little bit more readable. Right? That makes sense? All right. So let's create a course. So this add course, what we're going to do is that we're going to call course service add course or create course. We're going to pass this new course, and it's going to come back with the actual course that comes back from the server. And here we are going to append the course here. Right? We would say the actual course, we're going to push it in there, and we're going to set this. Oops, what did I do here? Uh-oh. Wait, what did I do? Oh, okay, yeah. So copy in here. There we go. I'm going to push the actual course, and then we're going to set state. Okay. All right. So let's try it out. Let's try it out. So let's refresh. Add course. Okay. So notice that I'm posting. This is being posted. If I refresh, okay, notice that they are permanently there. If I go to the grid, they're also there. New course. See that? If I can add course here too. See 10, 11, 12 being created here. And we go back. Right. I see them here. Excellent. Everybody good? That makes sense? All right, excellent. So let's keep going. So what about, I want to be able to edit this, right? I want to edit and then edit right here. Okay. So where does that happen? Where does that happen? Well, that happens in the row, right? The row has this edit and check and blah, 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 right? And so what I'd like to be able to do is to this title here, right? This link, this should be a link if I am not editing, right? Like default, right? I'm not editing this, right? But if I click on edit, I want this to be replaced with an input field, right? And so that input field will look something like this. Let's put an input field there. Okay, there's our input field, yes? And that input field, the value, the original value should be course.title. Okay, there it is. So whatever, blah, 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 right? I want to be able to edit it. Right now, I can't edit it. I can't edit it. Why can't I edit it? Well, I can't edit it because it's permanently tied to the value of that input field. Okay, so how do we do this? How can we modify this? Well, what we're going to do is that we're going to introduce a new technology, right? That is going to allow us to maintain state even inside of a function, right? Right now, we have introduced the fact that only classes can maintain state. And we had said that functional components like the grid can't maintain their own state, right? Well, I was lying to you, right? We can maintain state. The latest version of React introduced a technology called hooks, right? So hooks allow even functional components to maintain state, right? And now they're meant to maintain local state, right? They're not meant for application-wide state, even though you can use it for that. state that is not meant to be shared amongst components, right? As opposed to this state, this is kind of application level state, right? Notice that it's being shared with other components, right? We're passing this state down to the components. The components are talking back to us saying that I want to delete a course, blah, 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 right? So there's communication going back and forth about manipulating this state, right? Now, state maintained in a function, they're not meant to be application level state, right? They're meant for a small little tiny state where it's very localized, right? So let me show you how to do that. Let's go down to the row. So one of the things that first I want you to do, we're going to be able to do is to toggle between these two. Right? We're going to be able to say, well, if I'm not editing, right? If I'm not editing, I want to show the label, the link. But if I am editing, I want to show the input field. So I want to be able to toggle between these two. So how do we do that? Well, we need to maintain a state of some kind of variable, right? Some kind of variable that keeps track of that, right? So we're going to bring in the hook use state. Okay, so use state is going to allow us to maintain state. All right, so how do we do that? So to do this, we need to convert this slightly to same. It's still going to be a function, but is going to have a slightly different syntax, which we had before, right? We can convert this into because I need to do more than one thing, right? I don't just want to return this content, right? I want to also maintain state, right? So I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to put this inside a curly brackets. I'm going to put this in a return. I'm going to put this in a return, right? And put the parentheses around this. Okay. And then I'm going to put the whole thing in curly brackets. Okay. All right. We're still just a functional component. We're still just a functional component. All right. We just have a return. Nothing has changed. Right? It just looks the same exactly, right? But because I want to do more than just return, I want to do a couple more things, right? In particular, I want to maintain some kind of variable that can remember whether I'm editing or not. And then I want to be able to toggle it. How am I going to toggle it? I'm going to toggle with this pencil. Right? If I click on the pencil, I want to be able to toggle between these two. Right? So let's do that. So I'm going to call the variable, I'm going to call it editing and set editing. Right? And this is going to be equal to use state. Okay? So this is how use state works, right? Use state allows you to initialize a state variable, okay, that you can then update its value, right? And you can initialize it with initial value of saying false. Okay, what this does is that it returns const like that, right? So use state generates the variable and a mutator that allows you to mutate the state of the current state of that variable, right? And then you can just use that state, that new variable, just like any other variable, right? So for instance, you might say here, am I editing? Right? So I can say, I can put this now. Oops. I can put this link inside of an expression and ask, am I editing? Right? So are you editing? And so notice that editing is Boolean, right? Which has initial value of false, right? So the link should show when I'm not editing, right? So if I'm not editing and link, this will return. If this is false, this will render, right? And the input is gonna be the inverse. When I am editing, right? I want to be able to render this, right? So I can use the variable and put this inside of expression and say, am I editing? If I am, right, I will also render the input field. Okay, so how do I toggle this editing? I'm gonna toggle it with the pencil here, right? I'm gonna say on click, I'm going to set the editing to whatever the inverse of whatever the editing was, right? So I'm going to change it to not editing. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's toggle. Oops. Set editing is not a function. No? Oh, did I say this dot set editing? Okay, let's try that. Set editing. Did I misspell it? Set editing. This set editing. Set editing. This set editing. Why don't you like this set editing? This set editing. Set editing of undefined. Cannot read property set editing of undefined. No, I don't need this. I should be able to just call it like that. Why is this not working? This is something on the chat. In Chrome console, the only way to know error in code. Yes. Doesn't the IDEA prompt them, the IDE? It prompts syntax errors, but it does not prompt runtime errors. Wait a minute, maybe previous editing, and I'm going to return not previous editing. Let's see. All right, I'm going to have to check what is wrong with my code. Set editing is not a function. Set editing, use state, fall, set editing. I think I spelled it right? Yeah, I spelled it right. Why are you not grabbing this? Takes a function and returns this previous editing class. Let me do this. That. So this is that. And let me put a function here, console log set editing. What does that come out to be? Console. Okay, click on that. Oh, it's undefined. Why are you undefined? Use state. I think I'm using it right. You see? Use states. Hooks you can find out in React.js documentation. Oh, it's not click bracket. It's an array. There we go. Okay, let's try it again. Console. Let's refresh. Let's click on this. Okay, it's a function now. Good. All right, let's get back and let's rewrite this again. So this is going to be call set editing, and just like the set state, it takes as argument. It has two syntax, right? You can say maybe true, right? You can just pass in the value the new value, right? So for instance, if I click here, notice that it changes it. There we go. See that? Right? I can change the state for each one of these. Right? There we go. Right? But I can't toggle it. So I want to be able to calculate the next state, and I can this has another argument, right? Another where you can pass the you can pass in the old value, so the previous editing, right? Whether it was true or false, and then I can evaluate whatever I return from here will be the next value. So not previous editing. There we go. Okay, so let's refresh, and now I should be able to toggle it. So I click, there we go, and I click and toggle it. Actually, I don't want to toggle it, right? What I want to do is I want to start editing when I click here, and then when I say OK, I want to stop editing, right? So, so I can use this on click for the check mark right here for the check mark. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to leave it there because that's a good documentation. I'm going to use the old style, the other style, which is going to be true. I'm going to set it to true. And if I click on the check mark, it's going to set it to false. Right? So check mark is going to set it to false. There we go. Okay, so for instance, if I click on edit and then a check mark, stops it. See that? There we go. So I can edit and be done with individual ones. Perfect. Excellent. Same thing with these buttons, right? If I set it to true and I am editing, well, I don't want to show the editing button anymore, right? I want to show only the check mark. So I want to toggle between these two. So let's do that. Let me show you how you can toggle. I can use the same technique that we used earlier here by showing or hiding the other ones, right? I can say that here's an expression. If I am editing, I only want to show the save button, right? The check mark. And if I am not editing, right, I want to show the edit button. See that? So I can toggle between the two. So notice now this one is editing and it's not showing the pencil. So I can say okay, and notice that now I'm toggling between the two. See that? Okay. Perfect. Excellent. All right. So how about editing here? I can't type the value. So I want to be able to actually change that value. So how do I do that? Okay. So we need to store here the original value, the title, and then the set title. That'd be another local variable that we can change locally in here. Oops, state. Okay, and the title, we can initialize it to be empty string. Okay. All right. Oh, I already have a title here. Actually, I'm not using that title, am I? No, we're not using because you're using course title. Okay, that's fine. So we can remove that. All right, excellent. So I can give now, instead of this input field being course title, I can tie it to this title right here, right? Which is right now it's empty for now. So if I edit, notice that it's going to show empty, and I can actually, I can't type it. I need to change the state as I type, right? So how do I change that? Well, that will be with the input field. In the input field, as I type, I want to update the state of that title as I type. So on change, as I click every single keystroke, I'm going to get an event that contains the character or the new value of that input field. I want to update my variable title to be whatever I am typing. So I'm going to say that I'm going to set the title to be whatever the new event, the target.event. Okay, so let's try it again. So now I should be able to type, right? I can change each one of these. I can type each one of these. Now, obviously, when I say OK, it goes back to the link, right? Because I haven't actually changed haven't actually changed anything yet, right? I'm just playing around with a local copy of it, right? So let's see, is there a question on the chat? Does having two row components for both mode, enable, edit, disable, edit, and switching between them when click related icon, makes sense? Oh, where you can have two rows? Sure, you could do that, right? And you can, and maybe you can flip between the two depending on whether you're editing or not. Yeah, that would be totally fine. Yeah, that would be a complete different alternative way of doing it. Sure. Not as best practice, but by 1 to 2, yeah, definitely that could totally work. Yeah, especially if if you're row and you're editing and you're making many changes in that row, and maybe where you have a whole bunch of inputs and things like that, it might make more sense to have its own total component, like a like a read-only row component and then an editing component. Yes, yeah, totally, yeah. So yeah, so what I want to be able to do, right, is that this initial value of the state of this title should be the value of the course that you're passing me, right? So how do I initialize this? How do I initialize this, right? Well, I'd like to be able to pass here, right, the value of the course, right? Unfortunately, we cannot do this. Well, maybe. Let's see. Right. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that works. Okay. But then when I click it and say okay, right, I need to be able to grab the new state. Notice that I lost it, right? I lost the value. I need to grab the new value, right, and somehow send it over so it can be saved on the server. So how do we do that, right? When we say okay, I like to be able to save, right, or save the course. I want to call the course, right, and send it over to where the state is, right, and then send it to the server. All right, so how do we do that? So on the save here, where's your save? Here's the save, right? On check mark, we don't just want to set this false. We actually want to send, right, the course, the new edited course. How do we do that? So let's put this in a function so we can call it instead of just doing everything in here. Let's create a little function here and say we'll say const save course, which we're going to call, and we'll call this update course. So in save course, what are we going to do? We're going to do this check mark. I'm out of time. If you want to drop off, you're welcome to drop off. I'm just going to continue here and do the update so I can push this and so you can share, you can have this later tonight. Okay. So yeah, so in the check mark, I'm going to do this in here, right? Do that. Save course, right? So here I'm going to call save course instead. Save course. But I'm not only going to do that. I'm also going to recreate the object, and I'm going to send it up the chain of command so that it can be saved on the server. All right. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say the const new course, right? The new course. I'm going to copy over the old course. I'm going to copy over the old course, and for that we're going to use a new operator called the spreader operator, which basically what it does is that it can copy arrays, it can copy the object that you're in, right? So we're going to copy the course, right? So now the new course has all the attributes and values of the ... course, right? And then comma, you can override any new values, any new attributes. So for instance, I'm going to override the title, right? So that it has the current state variable title. Now I have the new value of the course. This course, it contains the ID, it contains all the data that has been sent over from the server, any metadata is still in there, right? And then we can send it over, right, up the chain of command with the new course, who's going to be responsible to actually save this to the server, right, and update the URL, update the row. So let's who sent me the update course? Well, that was my parent, who's a table, right? So the table sent me the function update course, which is being passed to us presumably through the props. Okay, who sent it to me? My manager. My manager sent me the update course, right? So this will be update course, which is going to be implemented here. All right, so update course is going to be right here. Say update course is going to receive the new course, right? And we can now let's print it out. Let's see if this works, right? We're going to do console log the new course here, right? Let's see if that works. So this new course, I'm going to edit it, and this is CS5610. I'm going to say OK, and there it is, right? There it is, the new object with the new title not working. What? We lost the new title. How come? Let's see. And title. Da, da, da. Let's go back down to the row. Title is here. We set the editing. We've been updating it, right? We've been updating it. Initialize it. Set title. Value. Set title. Let's put a breakpoint there. Let's see. Open a course row. And let's put a breakpoint right here. So you learn how to put breakpoints. So let's edit this. It's OK. And the title, it's undefined. How come it's undefined? Set title, title is undefined. Interesting. Set editing. Set title, event. So that is working because it is updating the title. Set title, title. Set editing. Save course. Set editing, save course. That's working. Set title. Change. All right, I'm gonna debug this. I'm gonna debug this, and then I'll push the results, and so you'll have this working so you can use it for your own purposes, right? For working on your assignment. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.